So, welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. And we hope that you're having an awesome day and hold the space for Susan Bingham. I haven't heard back, but she was supposed to go into surgery at 9:30. And I've written to Tim, her husband, and asked him to keep us informed how she's doing. So she's having a hip replacement, so hold the space for her. And I'm going to go ahead and say, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and extending love to Susan and especially to the mind, the heart, and the hands of the surgeon or the surgeon team that is going to be working on giving her a new hip. And that they're totally, completely guided by breath, by the presence of life in each of them, and transferring, supporting that life energy in Susan as she goes through this procedure that's going to give her relief of a degenerative hip and a new ability to dance. So holding the space and seeing Susan dancing. So welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here. And I have an agenda for today that I'd like to unfold. And I'm going to just kind of lay out a protocol for where this space I'm wanting to create today. There was a conversation that happened on Friday in the show that was interrupted, and I want to address that interruption and just kind of lay out a format for where to go with all of that. So the first thing I'm going to invite everybody to do is take a couple of nice deep breaths. Connect your breath. And I want to set a scene for understanding, discussing, and offering input to the situation that happened on Friday's show. There's an ancient Middle Eastern inquiry process that's called midrash. And that inquiry process grows out of the word darash, which means to seek, to inquire, to explore. Now, the process, I talked a little bit yesterday at the end of the show with Susan. I'm going to bring some of that back in because the process of inquiry is based in words, requires words, so it can be tricky, especially knowing what we know about words. So I'm going to repeat some of what I said yesterday with Susan right at the end of the show. I see there's several people who weren't there yesterday, so that we've got a foundation for how I'm hoping this is going to unfold. We'll see what happens. And I'll just ask everybody if you'll hold the space and stay connected with the breath, that it is breath that brings life, that brings intelligence. So the first quote I want to offer comes from Kahlil Gibran. I shared this yesterday with Susan. And this goes back actually almost 100 years ago. We're coming right up on 100 years ago. The Middle Eastern author Kahlil Gibran writes, "Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so the other half may reach you." Now, there's a lot of confusion about words, which, if we go to the Course in Miracles, the Course informs us very clearly that words are symbols of symbols, twice removed from the truth. Man, one might come to the conclusion that makes words pretty useless. An event happens in the actuality, in the world of the created. Remember, the Course says, think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. The constructs in your mind, perceptions, yes. But what is true in heaven and earth is beyond your naming. So we can't even get there with words. This becomes kind of a complex process. So I'm hoping to clarify and unfold that on another level today so we can make sense of it. So an event happens in the actuality and the mind generates a construct we call perception. And then we attach a word to represent that perception. And we're twice removed from the actuality of the event itself. Now, my offering is that where confusion comes in is when we convince ourselves that words are either useless, which some people go, well, if they're symbols of symbols, of course, then how could they be of any use? Or we convince ourselves they can achieve a task that they're not designed for. I'll put into the equation here that Yeshua says this: my words are your perfect life. I guess there's got to be another way to understand words. Yes, there is. You've got to do it with intelligence. And if you try to do it without breath, you're trying to do it without intelligence. Now, my offering is that the problem begins when we attempt to use words for a purpose they can't fulfill. If we're trying to understand truth through the use of words without full breath, we're trying to understand something without intelligence. That's pretty futile. If there's an unresolved issue at hand, especially one that involves a power person dynamic, my offering is that healing, understanding, will only come through forgiveness and breath. They won't come through words. However, words can guide us into the process. Words can't do the process for us, but they can serve the purpose of a guide. And I'd offer this is what Yeshua said when he said, my words are your perfect life. If you got these words, because of the way the human mind works and its function in regard to words, our emotions, the whole process of behavior. There's an area in the brain called Broca's area where words are active. It's right next to the emotional center. Man, if we get the emotional center going, words get crazy. If you've ever found yourself in hostility and fear, or especially with quote unquote the person you say you love, what happens? So once again, if there's an unresolved issue at hand, especially one that involves generational patterns like a power person dynamic, understanding and healing will only come through forgiveness and breath. Now, this idea that I introduced earlier of midrash, inquiry, is not possible where unresolved issues are active because the meanings held by perception based in those active issues will always muddy the waters and distort by projecting the meanings held in the unresolved mind onto the situation. Ultimately, we see things not the way they are, we see things the way we are. And when one is dealing out of an unresolved issue, they will swear that the meaning they've projected belongs to something other than themselves. So if one brings an unresolved issue to a situation, this idea of inquiry becomes impossible because of the projection. And I'd offer that's why, Yeshua always spoke in his public teachings in parables. If you read Matthew 13:34, he says, all these things Yeshua spoke to the crowds in parables. Indeed, he said nothing to them without a parable. And then in Mark 4:33 and 44, he informs, with many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. And I'd offer the example there would be as much as could get through the unresolved issues they carried, that the general public carried. And then that passage from Mark goes on to say, he did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. So clearly there's a distinction here, and the whole thing involves words. So the general crowds received the truth veiled in parables, while the disciples received the secrets, quote unquote secrets, or full explanation of the inner meaning. Although, if you go to John 6:60, he instructs the disciples, ask him, well, what do we need to do to, in essence, they say, what do we need to do to keep God happy? He tells them, he gives them an Aramaic idiom. In essence, he says, you're going to have to go in and do the work I've done and remove all construct from your mind, all data from your mind that can result in any form of hostility or fear-based perception. You're going to have to remove that from yourself. You're going to have to work through it. That's what that parable or that metaphor means. And how do they respond in John 6:60? His instruction. This is a hard saying. Who can hear it? And they walked with him no more. They left. They never came back. Now, the truth, of course, says, quote, cannot be spoken in words. The Course in Miracles is not an effort to tell us what is or how whatever is works. Quote, it offers a theoretical foundation, such as the text, which provides a necessary framework to make the exercises in the workbook meaningful. In other words, the theory, the words, are not the meaning. It's the instruction, the words, the true use of words. And why he says this is your perfect life is, here's how you achieve the result called your life. So the theoretical foundation, everything the Course says, all of the words in the Course, I don't know how many, tens of thousands of words, do one thing according to the Course. They don't tell the truth. A theoretical foundation, such as the text provides, is necessary as a framework to make the exercises of this workbook meaningful. Yet it is doing the exercises that will make the goal of the Course possible. Now, the Course acknowledges that words are from the world that darkness rules. And then it goes on to say, we use words from the world that darkness rules, quote, in order to proclaim its unreality and facilitate forgiveness of all that we've been taught, so that we can remove the roots of false perception. So words can function to give us directions. When Yeshua says, my words are your prayer, he said, I'm going to give you some directions. I'm not going to tell you the truth in words, can't be done. But I'm going to give you some directions. If you happen to say to me, when I invite you to this feast, remember the parable of the feast? All these important people were invited to the feast, and what did they do one by one? Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, I've got a fancy dinner. I got to go take care of my cattle. So when you're invited to do your work, if you're too busy to do the work of removing the roots of false perception, be careful when you jump in and try to convince others that the meaning you have for a situation is true about them rather than just being true about yourself. Course in Miracles goes on and says, it would indeed be strange if you were asked to go beyond all symbols of the world, words, forgetting them forever, yet we're asked to take a teaching function. You have need to use the symbols of the world a while, but be you not deceived by them as well. They do not, perception does not stand for anything at all. And in your practicing, it is this thought that will give you release from them. Words become but means by which you can communicate in ways the world can understand, by which you recognize is not the unity where true communication can be found. Then the Course goes on to say, thus what you need are intervals each day in which the learning of the world, that is the constructs of your mind, perceptions, words, become a transitory phase. And this is where I would insert, take time to breathe and get out of the prison of the mind. Take time to breathe and free yourself from the prison of the mind. Once again, quote from the Course, thus what you need are intervals each day in which the learning of the world, the constructs of your mind, your perception, your words, the unresolved issues you have become a transitory phase. Take time to breathe and release yourself from the prison house from which you go into the sunlight and forget the darkness. Here you understand the word, the name which the Creator has given you, the one identity which all things share, the one acknowledgement of what is true. And then you step back to darkness, not because you think it's real, but only to proclaim its unreality in terms which still have meaning in the world that darkness rules. And then there's a wonderful lesson. If you happen to have your Course in Miracles handy, you might want to turn to lesson 222. And I'm going to change a word in this lesson in order to convey the deeper Aramaic understanding than the Greek steeped minds that brought the Course forward offer. So lesson 222, God is with me. I live and breathe in him. God is with me. He is my source of life, the life within the air I breathe, the food by which I am sustained, the water which renews and cleanses me. He is my home, wherein I live and move, the breath which directs my actions, offers me its thoughts and guarantees. The one word I change here, and this is, the direction I'm heading from Friday's conversation, where we were doing midrash on the word spirit versus breath. So the Course literally reads, he is my home wherein I live, move, the spirit which directs my actions. I'm going to substitute, and this is my offering, that substituting the word breath, we get back to the actual Aramaic Yeshua's teachings. So he is my home wherein I live, move, the breath which directs my actions, offers me its thoughts and guarantees my safety from all pain. He covers me with kindness and with care and holds in love the sons and daughters he shines upon, who also shines on him. How still is he who knows the truth of what he speaks today? Now, think about, we want to get down to practicalities. Think about the times when there's been an unresolved issue moving in your mind. Maybe hostility, maybe fear, sadness, grief, a power person dynamic, the need to be right, the need to insist that my meaning must be true about you instead of being true about me. And think about how when you engaged in the breath and you activated what I'm coining a new term for, the Dikuja factor, that was sustained still point breath, whatever the issue was, it dissolved in the presence of that breath. It didn't dissolve by a conversation about a spirit being or a ghost. Now, you note with the Mind Shifters radio show and all the work we do that the experience of breathing, which has always been a focus of our work, it's been elevated to a new level. Since realizing after researching the most ancient Aramaic texts I could find that life is introduced into the body by and through the breath, and that there is no life or intelligence in the body, nor its mind without the breath, that the breath takes on a new increased significance. When breath is denied, held, or restricted, we're trying to function without intelligence, literally without life. The states of fear and or hostility require restricted breath to exist. I'll repeat that thought. The states of fear and or hostility require restricted breath to exist. What's restricted breath? Remember the Aramaic definition of Satan, the resistor, one who misleads. In order to stay in an issue, in order to stay in hostility or fear, breath has to be restricted. Now, my offering is that everything we do, if we are to be truly human, since the breath of life is the essence of our very lives, we must become breath-centered. I invite everyone to add the dimension of breath awareness to our inquiry, our midrash, and making that true midrash really possible. A method of breath inquiry, not the method for proving a point or winning a debate. It's a way of entering a conversation to discover what's alive inside of the conversation and what breathes inside each of us as participants. It's a form of sacred inquiry when engaged in with breath. It's a practice that assumes three things. One, the conversation's alive, not a closed artifact from the past. It's a living field of meaning that continues to unfold. The meaning is layered. It's not singular. It's no one final correct interpretation. This is the way it is. No dogma or doctrine offered. Truth is approached through multiple angles, voices, tensions, and even seeming contradictions. And each participant, when breathing, is a part of the subject that's being explored. It's not about extracting information. It's about engagement. Breathing and paying subtle attention to what the subject evokes in you matters. If it evokes issues, we'll face and process those issues out so that breath aliveness fuels each of us in the conversation. So shifting from, to bring this into context, shifting from what Yeshua did in public, parables, that was it. And he went to a different place, a different level, when he was with the disciples who had engaged and done the work that he required. So that breath inquiry, midrash, is closer to listening than explaining, closer to discovery than conclusion. Notice that Yeshua did not explore via this method with those who had issues that brought meanings that needed to be resolved. Because the public, who had not engaged in the level of inner work he required, remember, he taught those ones in parables. This level of conversation that we're talking about presumed inquiry, not issues. If we bring an issue to that inquiry, the inquiry will be ended. The midrash will stop. Because we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, as our minds have been shaped to see. Is it the facts of a thing that forms our perception of any given thing? Do our perceptions really describe the thing we think we're seeing? Or is it telling a story about the unseen influence that, when understood, comes from within us, comes from what's unresolved? Those who live, the public that Yeshua spoke with, basically the world they lived in, the world that they generated themselves, the world of perception, shaped what they thought was real, and they substituted their own unresolved issues for the truth. Again, there's a pretty large group of disciples, we're not told exactly how many, that Yeshua said, okay, we're going to go in, you're going to dig in and do some work. And they said, too hard a saying. Who can hear that? Who wants to go to that level? I love the idea of the feast you're inviting me to, but don't you know I'm busy? I've got other things to do. If you want to go to the level we're talking about, it's going to take sincere, constant, persistent, consistent engagement. But once again, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. We see the world our minds have been shaped to see. And that's not a criticism. It's not because we're flawed, but because the mind is always organizing experience through the structures it already has. That's why forgiveness is so important, to remove those structures. And those structures were formed before we could talk, before we could think for ourselves, before we could choose, often before we were even born. And most often it's a power person dynamic that compels behavior driven by the past. So these factors limit and determine what we can understand. That's why two people can look at the same event and see two completely different realities. And one who lives in denial insists that their reality is true about someone else. And that's where issues come forward. Each is seeing through an internal lens built from their personal history, language, family, plane, and the stories they inherited. And my offering is this is a realization that the doorway into everything that Yeshua taught. Because we do not understand how our minds generate our perceptual realities, then we can't understand anything he said because we're stuck in our perceptual realities. And what the mind always gives us is my reality, not actuality. The mind is always making its best attempt to assemble meaning, and that's why you've heard me say over and over and over and over again, you got to be out of your mind in order to truly function as a human being. And the way to be out of your mind is through the use of the breath. Otherwise, one will project unresolved power person dynamics where they do not belong. Yeshua understood this whole process. This is the core of what he taught. And yet most people don't stay around long enough to get the feast of understanding this. They're too busy in the world. Oh, I don't have time for that. He knew that the mind projects its past, that unresolved trauma echoes forward into the future, that childhood conclusions become adult perceptions, that language shapes thought, and fear reshapes everything it touches. I'd offer that he knew that most people never see actuality at all. The only thing they ever see is their own reality that's built from their own personal history. That's why that lesson in the course is so important. If you haven't reviewed it lately, jump on our website or on the YouTube channel and search for What is the World? That's probably one of the most important lessons in the Course in Miracles and one of the most misunderstood. Quote, the world is false perception. It is born of error. It has not left its source. It will remain no longer than the power person dynamic that gave it birth is cherished. Well, actually, the Course doesn't say that. It says the thought that gave it birth is cherished. And Yeshua knew how to change this. But before we can understand the solution, we've got to understand why we can't see clearly to begin with. let's imagine that we have a room with an X-ray machine. The child enters the room with you. To the child, the machine looks like a big box, some buttons, a window, a screen, wires. That is the child's reality. That's what the child's mind, based on the content of its mind, projects. It's honest, it's sincere, it's true. It's the child. And it's entirely limited by the brain cells the child has, and severely limits what the child can do and understand about what's at hand. I guarantee you, when you take that child into the room with the X-ray machine, there will be no medical procedure, no accurate diagnosis, nor healing mediated through the capability presented by the X-ray machine. A deeply trained, world-famous architect, brilliant architect, enters the same room. Will the patient waiting in the X-ray room gain any benefit? Not today. Now, a trained radiologist enters the room, and she sees electromagnetic radiation, shadow density, skeletal structure, tissue differentiation, injury patterns, and healing pathways. She sees all of that because she has the eyes to see and the ears to hear, the brain cells. And she's developed the internal capacity to take that device and, the X-ray machine didn't change when she came into the room. It was no different than the one the child saw or the brilliant architect saw. But everything changed because of the content of her mind. Understanding anything depends on the development of the one who looks. The person with brain cells brings possibility. The person with issues obscures possibilities. The person in denial cannot even enter the conversation because they're sure its judgment of the other is right and justified. And that's why we can't see actuality with an undeveloped inner world. We do not have the brain cells, Yeshua would say, the eyes to see and the ears to hear, to make sense of what's right there in front of us. Now, this whole body of work is about inviting everyone that engages to the feast of meaning. But if one is too busy to do what it takes to engage in the feast, to leave their issues and judgments at the door, they're trying to taste the subtle impact of rose petals on gently sauteed carrots with a mouthful of hot peppers. And the dish is found wanting. But the dish has not failed. The mouthful of hot peppers said, too hard a saying, who can hear it? And that person throws that savory meal into the compost bucket of their own unresolved issues. So as I propose this idea, and I bring forward this idea of midrash, inquiry founded in breath. It's an invitation for everyone to enter the inner conversation issue-free. The mind filled with unresolved offense, with power person dynamics of needing control, might take offense at this summation. This is an invitation to everyone to heal their capacity to take offense, so that each of us can enter the inquiry with the breath that searches for nuance rather than bulldozes and shatters things. Now, I'd like to offer a metaphor for the conversation that we had on Friday. Susan, Carrie, and I were, by metaphor, we'll see if it works or not. So Susan, Carrie, and I were swimming in a fine china teacup. There was an agenda, yes, exploring the temperature, the silkiness of the tea, the aroma, the impact on our physiology of the chemicals and nutrients in the tea. Yes, that's what we were doing. Now, remember, we're working here to teach a system of developing the ability to experience the subtleties of inquiry with breath. And my offering is, in that conversation, all of those skills were in full activity. And as we were, the three of us were swimming in the teacup, my offering is that a bulldozer came in and shattered the scene. That a meaning came in that did not represent anything accurate about Carrie or Susan or myself. And I do this in the spirit of an invitation to take the work to the next level. And so, Linda, I'm glad you're here because I'm going to offer you that invitation. I've noticed over the years that oftentimes you'd like to step into the conversation and take it over with your perception of things. That you like to teach. And my offering is that when you step in with that need to teach, that it comes from a stress level where a power person dynamic has been activated. And you bring in meanings that aren't accurate for the circumstance or situation. And I think it is a reflection, just my offering is that it's a reflection of how the power person, the unreserved power person dynamic of being controlled when the stress is up and the chips are down brings up this need to control. And my offering is that this, what I've observed over the years, and this may be totally mine, I'm offering it as feedback to you, is that this need to step in and teach as though your perception is a ruling gift, more often than not is a compulsive power person dynamic that needs to control and dominate as your power person dominated you. So for me, Friday, when you announced that the conversation between Carrie and Susan and I was about somebody being right, what that informed me of is that if you had been involved in that conversation, it would be about being right. But my offering is that's not accurate about what was happening. And I see that both Carrie and Susan are with us, so I'd like to open the question to them. As we were sharing about the breath, and I was really clear that I was going to keep the correct information from the Aramaic of Yeshua being the core of breath, and that the word spirit does not exist there. But I didn't experience Susan in any way, shape, or form, attempting to be right. I experienced Susan entering what I described earlier as midrash, as the inquiry, and Carrie the same, that it was inquiry. It's like, here we are in that midrash, in that interaction based in breath, where each is exploring meaning based in words, yes, but founded in breath. And so I'd like to inquire of Gary or Susan whether they experienced themselves as in that conversation before it was interrupted, if either of you experienced yourself or the other two of us as being in a conversation about being right. Gary, Susan, any thoughts?
Hi, everybody.
Hey there, young lady.
Thank you so much. I'm in my house coat, everybody, because I was on calls this
That's
morning.
okay.
And, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, there was just so much truth what you just spoke, and it was beautiful. And I love this container for this level of honesty, or just, to be able to receive this depth. So that I just wanted to acknowledge you for. Well, for me, I was coming up against a deeper truth that my mind didn't understand. And it was the word that Andrea uses often is titrating. So, because I was facing a truth that I was trying to attach meaning to for my known reality, if that even makes sense. So, and then Carrie was saying stuff. Yeah, and Carrie was saying stuff. You were saying stuff, and yet I was coming forward to try to make meaning of this deeper truth. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say. So I really appreciate that.
That's exactly what midrash is. If you go back and look at what that inquiry is, and when breath is there, it takes it all to the next level.
Yeah, and so that's beautiful. And when Celinda brought the next piece in, she did a glorious job because it deeply connected me to the truth, which was beyond words. So it actually took me out of my meaning making when she referenced the Rumi poem, and then we got to just rest in the breath and have the direct experience. I sensed that was needed. She played her role perfectly. As you're speaking today, I think you're touching on something that I did not pick up in the exchange, that there might be this underwriting need because of the power person dynamic. So there's an opportunity there to see what the intention was behind her coming forward. But what she brought in actually broke me free. I just wanted to say that. That's how I experienced it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. Carrie, any thoughts for you? And then Celinda too, please.
Hello.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome.
Hi. I'm not going to turn my camera on. I'm not really dressed for the occasion.
That's cool. That's okay. That's why I don't turn my camera on.
Yeah. So similarly, I mean, I did feel that the Rumi poem was very beautiful and
yes,
lovely. And I also did feel a little shut down in that the spirit of inquiry was over somehow, and I wasn't ready for it to be over. So I
agree.
I did feel that. And I'm sitting here feeling a lot of love for Celinda, for the beautiful soul that she is.
Extending it in her direction with you, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I did go on to do some research about the breath in A Course in Miracles, and I did send you, even Susan, a text about what I discovered, and I did it with AI because it can, it can sift through tons of material so quickly. And it was a beautiful thing. It gave a lot of sort of generalizations, but it also, when I asked the question about a specific reference to the breath, it brought up lesson 222. And so I was loving what you did with 222 about reading that and making that suggestion about changing a word from spirit to breath, because that was kind of the conversation that we were having. And I have been doing also this meditation that references the breath a lot in reference to connection. And I really also think that we can get hung up with words. And, a word like love or spirit, any word, take any word. And if, like you say, if you've got 500 people in the room, you'll get 500 different definitions. I mean, I've had that shown to me in processes I've done where I sit around a room and we say, write down all 10 words that you think mean love, and everybody has different words. So I think we can really get hung up on words. And, I've had conversations with people in a group where we've been talking about someone, and someone is explaining and telling us their experience of something. And
Right.
I get it, and I really get it, and the other person doesn't get it. So the words that we use can be, like you say, it's like, what do our brain cells have there to be able to receive that? And to have an experience related by someone is a very powerful thing, even if we don't resonate with it. Oh, I don't understand that. I don't relate to that. We can still honor
Yep.
that, right? So,
For sure.
I just love how you explained all of this in relation to the mind and the projection. And we want to come from a place of oneness, all of us, I think.
Yeah.
We want to be there so badly that that maybe that's the wrong word.
Maybe we want to work on being there so goodly, eh?
Yeah, I got it.
Regulatory speech.
Yeah. We want to be there almost determinedly. Well, for me, I'm speaking for me, that I want to be there almost in a determinedly way, that is the focus of my life. And I'm wondering now, after this conversation, that I'm not getting in my own way with
Well,
my
my
mind,
offering would be
with my
based on
mind.
what you've just said. Yeah, that's it. And my offering here would be, notice that you can't get hung up on words if you're in the breath. If the word is breath, everybody's got one. And you either do it or you don't. And if you do, life moves in you. If you don't, life is voided. If you breathe, if you do, intelligence moves in you. I did a still point session with someone yesterday, and they came in, they'd just gone through a relationship breakup, and they were crying, and they've been crying for days and in pain and trauma, and, thinking about what's this other person doing, and they're with somebody else and all. And about 20 minutes, and this is what I'm working to understand on a new level for me because of my own, recent entry into a whole new level of breath practice, is that there's this Dikucha factor. The Creator has a breath designed for humans, And because of the resistance built up against Satan in Aramaic being the resistor, physiological resistance, that it takes a sustained, especially if supported 20, maybe 30 minutes before this other factor kicks in. And here's this person who was in just deep trauma and, I mean, crying, not screaming, but not far from it. And all of a sudden, physiological joy kicks in. And they're like, what just happened? This is your natural state. It takes restricted breath to facilitate perception based in pain and trauma. It takes that resistance. And we let it go. So for me, all the misunderstanding disappears. If you breathe, you have intelligence moving in you. If you don't, you don't. And the denial of the Holy Spirit, again, I want to stay accurate with the Aramaic, not with the Greeks. It's when you have the breath moving in you, it facilitates wholeness and joy, regardless of what's going on in the world, because that's the natural state of breath flowing through, of human life, of love flowing through a cell. And when we restrict it, when they said the denial of the Holy Spirit, the Greek cosmology, the denial of the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. You got a whole theology based in trauma, threat, and eternal damnation. I mean, I have worked, I think about one guy who was probably, I don't know, he was in his mid to late 60s that I worked with years ago. And this guy really, he was brought up in this Greek mythology that's been put in Yeshua's mouth. And he spoke to me about his true and sincerely held belief that he knew, because when he was a teenager, he had done what he perceived as denying the Holy Spirit. This man had lived his whole life knowing that when he died, he was going to burn in hell for all of eternity because he denied the Holy Spirit. And that was the unforgivable sin. That's the destructive impact of words misused. If we go to the Aramaic, if we go to what Yeshua said, his accurate words, what he says is, if you deny and the long form of it, if you deny the mechanism that undoes your errors, then you're stuck in your errors for as long as you deny it. The denial of Roku Dekucha, the denial of the breath, leaves you stuck in unforgiveness. I mean, I think about that one man, and I wasn't able to resolve that for him. That was probably 25 years ago. He was in his 60s then, so he may well be passed by now. I don't know. But this guy really, he literally spent decades of his life based in this horrific insanity, believing that he was going to burn in hell for eternity. Fortunately, we've all got the breath, and we've all got access to the intelligence of the Creator right there inside of us anytime we choose to breathe. And I'd like to invite Celinda to unmute. And Celinda, I'm going to invite you to, I don't know whether you've done the Power Person worksheet at all yet, but I would invite you, if you would, to re-listen to the show from Friday and listen to the space where you told us that the exercise that we were engaged in had something to do with proving that we're right, and to look at that one and transfer that whole issue to that long form power person worksheet and see what happens. Are you open for that assignment? Breathing with you. Are you with us, Linda? Or I know you just, would you rather just stay muted? And that's okay, certainly. I'll presume that's what's happening. Then what I'll do, seeing as I've only got a couple of minutes left, is open the floor to anyone else who's got anything to share. I hope this conversation's made sense for everybody, and anyone have a thought to offer? Then I will complete it with the
Celinda's
poem
unmuted.
that Celinda. Oh, okay. I'll complete it with the poem that Celinda read at the end of the piece from Rumi that says, "Out there's a field. I'll meet you there, and the field is the breath, and joining each and every one of you in the breath." Celinda, young lady, welcome.
Yes. I thought I had unmuted myself, but apparently not.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Welcome.
I have done the 3-page Power Person Week worksheet, and that was totally manageable for me, and I would love to do it again. The 18-page worksheet is just totally beyond what I even want to do because of how I physiologically feel when I even approach it. It feels like a tax form on steroids for me. I just have no desire to go there.
Yeah. Would you be willing? Are you willing to have any coaching, or if that's that, then I'll end the conversation with that.
I don't mind coaching.
Okay. So my coaching would be, I got that tax forms on steroids means that there's an experience you've got with doing paperwork that holds a lot of trauma for you. I might suggest you might want to do some worksheets around that and let that go from your physiology so that you're not inhibited by that past. And
that's part of it, and also what we're dealing with at this point in our lives, with the obligations that we have a consent committed to, that I need to find, or this is my perception only, that what is the word? I'm at a loss for words here. By the way, I appreciate very much what you shared today, and Carrie and Susan as well. I know that I feel like I've come in to be, or I have taken on a persona of being a teacher. Whether that is my purpose or not, I have no idea. I think my primary purpose is to connect ideas.
And I appreciate how you've done that with me over the years. You connected me to several things that have been very good.
Right. And I also realize that there is definitely a power person dynamics I'm still working through. So I really appreciate what you said. I asked Jeannie if she would do a worksheet with me, and let us do that suggestion you had about rephrase it one more time for me. Doing a power person dynamic worksheet on what I was
suggesting is that you listen to what Carrie and Susan and I were doing on Friday, and then listen
I definitely
to
will.
you coming in and reducing that down to that somebody was trying to be right, and doing a power person worksheet on that. And my invitation would be to befriend the power person worksheet. I promise you, the only thing it will offer you is healing. Yeah, it's going to bring some stuff up that needs to be healed, but when I hear you say, well, I got all these obligations, I hear you, but I also hear that you're really about and wanting to heal. And you remember back 2,000 years ago, there was this parable that was given of Yeshua, and he invited people to the feast, and most of them said they were too busy. Oh, I got to go take care of my flocks. I got this, I got that, I got that. And Celinda, I think, if I gather correctly, over the last, 2 years or so, you really moved in a direction of deeper and deeper and deeper layers and levels of your healing work. And so the space I would hold for you is that you befriend that worksheet. It will do you nothing but show you parts of your mind that you can simply let go of and be free of, so that you could look at anything, a tax form or a 19-page worksheet, and go, oh, I can do this, because you're freed of the burden of the past. That's what the invitation is to go into that freedom. Carrie, you have a thought to add, please?
Yeah, I had a quick thought for Celinda that worked for me and Terry. Terry and I have been doing the Power Person workbook, I'm going to call it. And
okay. I'm going to have to change the name, but okay, I got it.
It's true. It is a workbook.
And the way we've kind of flowed through it is in pieces, so that we're not feeling like we have to sit down and do the whole thing at once, like
right.
Like the wake up sheet, so that and having a buddy to do it with. So the two of us have kind of worked through things, and it's been beautiful unfoldment, because as Terry and I have gotten together for an hour once a week, or an hour and a half maybe, and we've done maybe 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of it. And so that allows us to go in deeper, to explore things, and not feel like it's overwhelming. So that's just a thought.
Great input. Do it the way you'd eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Great
and then
thought.
One more piece just for you, Celinda. So in the codependency to interdependency group that we're doing in the facilitation, well, the Power Person workbook came in, and we've been going through it for I don't know how many weeks now. I think we may come to the end of the workbook just before
Wednesday
Christmas.
night.
Yeah, perfect. It'll be perfect. So, and then I was used as the test case, or that he worked. Michael used a lot of me as the template to go through it, and it is. I have to just say this piece. I mean, the depth of processing that gets to happen in meeting your own mind is, it is so worth it, even with the resistance of it, piece by piece. Like, I cannot say enough of what it has been revealing and unfurling in my own mind to some really deep origin issues of belief systems that I get to collapse in this mind energy. And just what Michael said earlier about the content of the mind and the brain cells, get to clean it up. So I hold that for you, because you bring so much to the group, and also that we get to see our perceptions accurately, so then we can have a direct connection to the truth of God.
And I haven't counted how many weeks we've been doing that worksheet, but it's been at least 7 weeks now, I think.
Because we were doing it when I was in longer than, because I think we were in week, probably since I went to Kauai, and I was in Kauai in September, so a number of weeks.
Yeah.
And
so it's meant to be it's its own intensive. There's no question about it. And Celinda, I think you were actually part of the intensive in which it really developed from, for 25 years, that worksheet had been a one-page worksheet until that, I believe it was the second codependence online intensive that we did. And it's covered in the video series that everybody who participated in that intensive has. And, that's where it developed into the textbook that it's become. So.
Perhaps Thursday we can go through with Jeannie on that worksheet about being right, because that's really important. I've been having growing awareness that two things. Sometimes I realize I'm in a debate and I don't even know how I got there, but I put myself in a debate.
Rooting the word debate is to beat. Remember the root of the word debate is to beat. And notice how it felt when your power person had to be right and beat you. Verbally or emotionally or whatever way it was. Yeah.
Right. And I'm very aware of that. And I'm saying, wait a minute here. I don't even like being in debates. And I find myself in debates more often than I would care to be. And that is definitely connected to being digging in and feeling threatened and having to be right. Having to have my viewpoint intact. But there is another aspect that I would also like to share with you, and that is the aspect that I've shared before of the little kid who's on tiptoes, who is the center of the universe in its own mind with its little flashlight overhead, and not even being aware of its impact when it wants to share. And that's not a rightness thing. That's a baby thing. And we can explore the connections of all of that with the need to be heard, which is being it's so enthused that we're the only thing that exists. And so I'll share that with you too. So I definitely will look at the end of that, and I will do my best to get back to my physical feelings about that, because, as I said, connection is very important. And to me, and if I can make a broad enough sweep so someone else can be connected to an idea, not because it's right, but because it's just more information, and they get to choose from their smorgasbord, their spiritual smorgasbord, what works for them. And that has worked for me, and I've been doing a lot of work that has been using tools other than some of the Aramaic tools.
Right. Cool.
So I feel comfortable choosing my own path in this pathless journey of discernment. Yeah.
Secret, there is no path. You must make your own path. Yes.
That's right. And sometimes I get my back up, which doesn't help at all. And sometimes I think I know, and that doesn't help at all. So blessings, and thank you so much, everyone, for sharing.
Can I just add one more thing, Celinda?
We're all... Yes.
Before you wrap up, one thing's coming through, and this is what I had to learn. Dr. Tim helped me see this, back to my adaptive behavior of fawning. So when sitting in the moment and being able to ask oneself, what is my intention here in this moment, when I'm coming forward to make an offering, or when I'm bringing anything forward, to just pause for a moment and ask from which place that's coming from. Is that coming from the wounded mind, or the non-being mind, the wounded energy, or is it coming from the place of the true mind? So I just offer that. I like
that.
Yeah.
And I like to add that to what Dr. Tim says about asking to be shown what's mine to do and what's mine to be in that moment. That's where I'm too fast to jump in without sitting for a moment and asking. Yeah, it's part of thinking we know, right?
Yeah,
And my offering
or
is
not even, just being excited.
my offering is the way to ask is to breathe, to take a breath. That's when the intelligence, the real intelligence comes in. And I want to acknowledge you, Celinda, for instead of getting into a debate, instead of beating on me, which I had a little bit of work to do before I presented this today, for me personally. So I appreciate your gentleness and your receptivity and your willingness to just be open to the conversation. And for Susan's input, for Carrie's input, I think this is just an awesome example for everybody.
And let me just put in two things before we close. Celinda, I have the kids the next 2 days, and Lincoln's not always cooperative during the radio show. He wants to play. So it would be Friday before I could do the worksheet with you.
Sweetheart, you have a date.
Okay. And
By
then the
then, I
Friday's it.
should have percolated it and stewed everything really well.
Awesome. And I did get a text from Tim Bingham at 12:03, and he said, Sue went through the surgery fine. My son Jonathan and I are in the waiting room waiting to see her.
Yay. Well, sending love and recovery, sending energy to Susan and to everybody there holding the space that they're empowered to really be the space for her.
Yeah.
And appreciation to
And
the
Jeannie, would
skill
you
of
be-
the surgeon's hands. Go ahead.
Do what, Celinda?
Would you be willing to really go deep inside of yourself and see what comes through about which worksheet of all of those wonderful worksheets on your website would be precisely the one that I should work through with you? Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
If
And,
that's not going to burden you?
No, the one that I usually use is either the abbreviated or there's a new one out there now, and it's the one that I've included in my book. And it's actually titled Healing Generations Wake Up Sheet.
Oh, I would love to try that one,
Okay,
if that resonates for you.
that's fine.
And thank you, Michael, for all the worksheets you've done with me. When I need a worksheet, I reach out to you or Tim.
Awesome.
And I'd love to include Jeannie, too. Time-wise, I am trying to do my best to listen to the program and be in Dr. Tim's support group. And so I'm spending a good 10 hours in one form or another
Awesome.
each week.
Awesome.
In one
Holding
way
this
or
space
another,
for you.
I'm spending that much.
All right.
And thank you.
Hey,
Thanks, everybody.
honored and delighted. Thanks for being on the team. Thank you, everybody, for holding the space. Blessings. Bye-bye.